Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast Season 2. Really pleased to have you all with me. Hopefully when I say you all, that is because there's a bunch of you, not just one person on their own. But if you're that one person, great. Happy to have you here with me. So I'm excited today. I've got somebody I've known for a while, although we were just trying to work out how long ago we last spoke or last saw each other. And it was quite a long time ago. It's Will Gregorian, good guy, easy to speak to. Got a very interesting career path. And so I'm excited to have him on board. Welcome, Will.
Thank you. Good to be here. And nice seeing you. It has been a while.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah. I don't know why. I'm sure we've probably crossed paths at a whole bunch of conferences and stuff and maybe just walked past them.
It happens. Yeah. You know, like pandemic didn't help with that.
No, very true. Yeah, I feel like it was definitely pre-pandemic. I thought it was more recent than that, but you said to me it was pre-pandemic. So
it was pre. It's been a while.
Oh dear. A few more grey hairs, probably for both of us, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Good stuff. Well, look, thank you for like giving up some of your time to talk through your career and inspire the CISOs of tomorrow. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I look to see if I can inspire.
Good. I'm sure you will do. Well, should we kick off with you sort of just giving everybody a little bit of an overview of what you're up to at the moment, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been at a company called Galileo Medical for the last year and a half and then some. By happenstance, I have been working and I've always been passionate about digital health in general. And when the opportunity arose, I jumped right on it, no hesitation. And that's largely because obviously I knew our CEO by reputation. He started at One Medical. He was very successful there. So it made sense for me to capitalize on that and see how I can help him with his new endeavor.
Nice. I didn't realize that. I was a fan of One Medical when I lived in New York. They were amazing.
Me too. When I was in the San Francisco Bay Area for as long as I was there, One Medical, when it became to be the thing, it was super convenient and really nice to be able to just go visit the office, and you knew the level of quality and care was going to be exactly the same way, no matter where you
100%. And we getting see. I mean, I think it's things like I notice now is like how long it takes to get an appointment or get seen to, or like anytime you got something wrong with you, you're usually down at urgent care rather than actually seeing the person that knows you and your background, right? So that could be a whole different podcast. The stuff I could talk about. That we could really go down that one. Well, let's crack on with your career. Like getting into cyber, what was your background? What was that foundation?
Oh, the foundation. So back in the day, in my troubled youth, do you remember ICQ?
No.
The chat app?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah.
Like you would randomly connect with everybody.
Yes.
So how this whole thing started was that I was actually I started off as a script kiddie. And you have to remember the mid 90s was literally like the time where the internet became the thing to be. It was an evolution of sorts. And revolutionary. I ended up just by happenstance getting into online gaming. Then one thing led to another, and then it ended up being that I would randomly connect with different people and talk to them online. And I had aspirations to become a chef at the moment.
Okay,
it was really interesting. Then I realized I don't want to be a chef. This is a lot of hard work.
Yes. Yep.
So one thing led to another, and I ended up developing websites as well as interactive applications in Macromedia Flash.
Yeah, remember Flash?
Which was acquired by Adobe. Yeah. So that was my humble beginnings there. So I taught myself how to write JavaScript as well as code within Flash and how to animate, raster vectors, the whole 9 yards. And one thing led to another, but I also realized that I'm not the developer type, so I didn't necessarily enjoy sitting there and dwelling on the code and trying to debug it the whole 9 yards. One thing led to another. I ended up at a very small web hosting company that let me do system administration. And first, my humble beginning there was also like help desk. So I
Yeah.
started in help desk, answering support tickets. One thing led to another. Then you start doing system administration, and this is the early 2000s. Um, One thing that I realized was that there was an insatiable appetite there from a learning perspective. I didn't know what I was doing. That was never like the fear. What I knew that is like, I don't know what this thing is, but I'm going to figure it out. And frankly speaking, I mean, that's how like the whole Flash thing became to be, because I was like, hey, this looks cool. I want to like try to animate something. Led to another thing, and it was like an evolution of sorts, going through like the motions of like technology, figuring out like what matches the neural net in my brain.
Uh-huh.
The neurons
Yeah.
were clicking, they were firing. And then help desk was definitely the thing that I enjoyed doing, but I also realized that there wasn't necessarily like that was just the beginning of
Hmm.
it. There was no like like you're going to become the master of help desk. There's no
Right.
such thing, right? It's just it's basically a stepping stone of
Yeah.
sorts that you're going through. So that the innate desire to help others was definitely satisfied there, but the need to learn was not satisfied there. So that ended up going into the help, the system administration. That's when I became. That's where I started to learn more about Windows NT at the
Hmm.
time, then Windows 2000, then Linux operating
Yep.
systems, and the whole nine yards. And one thing led to another, but ultimately, I didn't see myself as a good employee.
Okay.
I quit. I started my own web hosting business,
Right.
and I ran it for a good 6 years. And
Wow.
that really, like, sort of like, opened up the floodgates, so to speak, in terms of you gotta learn as you're running. Like there's a lot that you need to do. So there was customer service.
Hmm.
There was also like like setting up the racking and stacking the servers, figuring out the networking layer, the whole nine yards. And every time that I learned something new, it would obviously like increase my like knowledge
Yeah.
base. One thing that did become real, shared hosting. You have lots of customers, and at the time, everybody was running PHP applications, and there were lots and lots of bad actors out there trying to make an example of them. And PHP was just ripe for like pwnage, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, like one, I think like my first time that I noticed somebody's website was compromised was they were obviously like running an insecure PHP BB, which is a forum
Hmm.
application app, and that was like my first fix in terms of how did this happen? Why did it happen? Not on my watch.
Right.
So I had to like start like very quickly figuring out, okay, what are the countermeasures that I can implement to sort of like circumvent like the low level attacks, if you will,
Yeah.
because it was like probably like some script kiddie that was like running it out there, like they figured out how to run a script that basically like found vulnerable websites, if you will.
Yeah.
And and lo and behold, I mean, that's how I started. The whole ICQ story, before we go too far away from that, was exactly that. Like I used to joke with my buddies online that, hey, do you want a cup holder? And I would just pop open their CD-ROM tray. I'm
Yeah.
dating
Nice.
myself here.
Yeah.
That was like done through like like Trojan horses that they would install on their computers, and we would just like have a laughter about it, and like you would move on. Anyway, so like now fast forward to like the web hosting days, the internet now has become prolific. Lots of people are like running their e-commerce applications. The whole thing is happening, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I like help them protect them? And this was my beginning in the security world. Very like there's nothing like the pressure of having to learn it
Yeah.
and to fix it,
Yeah.
and
Especially when you're the
that
boss.
really
It's your company, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, like it's not my website,
right.
it's their website that I'm hosting for them, but it is my server. So I do have like the fiduciary responsibility to protect them
Hmm.
and help them protect it. So the customer service element, coupled with the need to like make sure that the server does not become compromised, because we have other like customers on the same machine. So that really like helped me understand, but also like speed up my knowledge base in terms of security. So operationally speaking, that happened, but unfortunately, that was during the 2008 recession days. So yeah, you can imagine like the business went bust, and I joined the workforce. I actually joined the workforce. I went to this company called HomeGain, which was really interesting. They were in the real estate business. Maybe not the best decision to join at the recession time,
Right.
because real estate, the whole thing. Anyways, my boss was a former corpsman, so um, he was in the
Yeah.
Navy, huge on Unix. he hired me because he saw the hunger and the passion, and he was like, one thing he mentioned during the interview is like, I could probably hire someone who has like 20 years of
Mm-hmm.
experience in Unix world. They can do the Sun systems, all of that, but they'll probably get bored. They'll leave. Whereas like he could like mentor. So he did become an intern a mentor for me. Hi Jim. Really great guy. He one of the mantras that he taught me was see one, do one, teach one, and I've like since like adopted that. Like we'll try to instill that onto others
Mm-hmm.
as much as I can. And that's where I got to basically learn more about information security and cybersecurity. Before we called it cybersecurity, we back then we still called it
It was
infosec.
infosec, right? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
even when we kicked off in 2012, when we kicked off Tyro, we were still calling it infosec. I feel it's only cyber more
yeah,
recently. I have a quick question for
yeah.
you. So,
Sure.
you wanted to be a chef, but obviously you had
Uh
passion for
huh.
computers and you were in that internet world. Were you
Yeah.
studying? Were you at school? What stage? Like, what did you study, or did you go to college?
I
What's your background?
I am the college dropout. I am the poster child as much as everybody else is in the Silicon Valley. Now, mind you, like I was in California and I was in the Bay
Yeah.
Area, so very easy. Like the premise and the promises of, oh, you can make it rich quickly. Maybe you can shortcut the system. You know, my ADHD got the best of me. Let's put it that way. I chose to drop out.
I never
But
even
yeah, like
started, by the way, so there's no judgment. I never even got started on it, so there you go.
if someone were to ask me, like, would you have done it differently? Probably. Well, maybe we'll get to
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So I dropped out because it did get the best of me, and it was a calculated risk, but also risky.
Hmm.
Let's face it. Like, I think you risk takers are the ones that go into the security
Yeah.
world because they do like to take risk. Um, Mind you, that I was young and naive, and I didn't know what risk was at the time, and it was just something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was like, YOLO, let's go do it. So that's how it started. But yeah, the chef thing is really interesting. I remember that I used to work at a catering company, and my boss, this was like 2 o'clock in the morning where we're returning from the catering business. And I was sitting on the seat, and he was driving back, and he looked at me, and I had the most severe neck pain ever.
Right.
And I remember that, he said, Will, you're too young for this. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I don't want to break my back.
Yeah.
I'm going to go figure out something else. That was like how I actually led to this. I knew computers. I knew that there was something there. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how the internet would become like, such a like prolific
Hmm.
thing. Let's put it that way. I didn't know the industry. What I knew was that I could potentially capitalize on this, and they call it, maybe like intuition, whatever you want to call it. It was what it was. I just ran with it,
Yeah.
not knowing exactly how it was going to pan out, but it has panned out wonderfully. It's developed a really great career, and I'm thankful for my own decision doing
Yeah.
that. And also thankful for the quite a few people that actually helped me along the way. So let's go back to Jim.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Yeah, so the guy, like like obviously, like he's still quite a bit in the short tenure that I was there because of the housing market and the
Hmm.
real estate market, the way it panned out. But nonetheless, the fix that I got from him, he taught me how to write Python code. He taught me how to do change management, change control, principles that were, frankly speaking, like sort of like spoken, but he didn't necessarily recite it from a governance perspective. When you think about information security, cybersecurity, it was never that. It was never like policy driven. It was more about do these things and do them well, and you will help the company protect itself, and you will protect the company along the way. Anyways, one thing that he taught me was a lot about cryptography, encryption, the whole nine
Hmm.
yards. I remember, like like back then, like you have to remember, like this is like before, like everything was like broken, and everything was like like increasing from like horsepower and computing power
Yeah.
perspective. Um, we were using DES and triple DES for encryption, for example. Like we would literally like pipe a whole bunch of like password files in plain text through triple DES to encrypt them so that it wouldn't like fall into the wrong hands. That's how we were doing it, and this is like predating the one password key pass days.
Yeah.
Like literally, we would have to have our own password management mechanisms. That's how I started. That really got me interested. I remember and this is right around this. Now we're going to segue into the other thing. I remember seeing Iron Key. Do you know what Iron Key is? Have you ever heard of
Yeah,
Iron
I've heard of
Keys?
Iron Key, and I'm trying to. I don't know, but I don't know why I've heard of Iron Keys.
This is around 2007. Iron Key was like a rinky-dink small startup that had developed this self-encrypted USB drives that were indestructible, according to them.
Okay.
In fact, they're like well known, like sort of like studies right now, because there's like some person who has like their crypto wallet that they forgot like the passkey, and those Iron Keys were self-destructed. So you could try 10 times, and on the 10th attempt,
That's it.
you would literally
Wipe.
self-destruct,
Right.
right? So somebody has Bitcoins on their Iron Key, and there's a lab that's actually trying to break it.
That's where I've heard it
Yeah,
from. Yeah, and it's like a lot of
yeah.
money, right? It's got to the point where it's an
Yes.
awful lot, so it's worth them trying.
It is, yes, it's an awful lot of money. So there's like an entire group of folks and researchers who are basically trying to break that, and they're reverse engineering it right now. So back in 2007, Iron Key was just coming up on the scene. I had, and this is like, I used to blog about technology quite a bit on my own website. I had written a blog post all about Iron Key because I was super excited about it. Little did I know that I was actually marketing myself to them, because they had picked it up in their SEO, like searches,
Yeah.
organic searches, the results, and all that stuff. So when HomeGain didn't work, I applied that Iron Key as a system administrator, and it was almost like an easy win, because I got a call. They're like, "Oh yeah, we know about your website. We read your article. We like you."
Oh, nice.
One thing led to another. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a car guy. Like I like to work on cars. Like like you just like symbiotically, like good relationship. It was already built, so I got the job there."
Now,
I was like,
I'm gonna stop you there, because this
Sure.
is obviously I didn't know about this about you until you just told me, but this
Yeah.
is so current. Like, how many times do we talk about people that should think about their branding and what they're putting out there, and doing articles on
Yep.
LinkedIn and that sort of stuff. And even then, these things were hitting home and
All
creating
of
those
it.
introductions that make it easier to get a job. So this is great. I love this.
Yep. Yeah. If I could quote one person, Joe Fulton, who used to be the former CISO at Splunk, the one thing that he told me was always be selling. I
Yes.
still remember it till this day. I remember when he mentioned that to me. We were like, hanging out, and he mentioned that, and I was like, that resonated, and that is exactly it. You still have to show,
Hmm.
right? It's never like like you look, sometimes if you're looking for a job, easy enough to like go through the front door. Sometimes you have to try, and that today is even more relevant. You have to be able to sell,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to show that and it's not about yeah, obviously in the security world, if you're a researcher, yes, like you'll earn your reputation through bug bounties, whatever the case might be, but you still have to show that you know what you're doing, and that you have to network. You have to be able to write about knowledge base, Medium articles, LinkedIn, whatever the case might be. Doesn't mean like you have to become an influencer, so to speak, but it does mean like you do have to kind of try. Like you have to basically put yourself out there. So that is tried and true, still remains relevant. It was relevant back then, still even more relevant today.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I joined Iron Key. I was there for quite some time. That obviously was like the first security company that I joined. I learned quite a bit from there. Misha, who was one of our founding leaders there on the technology org, made it worth my while. Extremely collaborative, and I will say that I actually met my wife there.
Oh,
So
nice.
there it is.
Win-win.
Yeah, it was a win-win. But yeah, it was like one of the best experiences that I had, and I really took off from there, and that really positioned me to become a leader, so to speak. So from Iron Key, I had several other roles as IT management, security management.
So did you make that move from an individual contributor to a manager at Iron Key? Was that something that your first
I didn't,
opportunity?
but the seniority rose as I went through these
Right.
companies. So at Iron Key, I became more of a senior individual contributor.
Yeah.
The next role that I had was an IT manager role,
Right.
and I never looked at it from a I need to stick in the security world. I always consider myself to be a generalist.
Right.
I wanted to basically blend the experiences. What I didn't want to do is pigeonhole myself, if you will, into just one role. What I wanted to do is blend the experiences and figure out eventually where it would lead me, right? I never looked at my career as I'm going to become a security professional.
Yeah.
And unknowingly, I was doing that. You know, at the unconscious level, I was probably like doing that. But at the conscious level, I never looked at it as I'm going to become a CISO. That was never ever like part of my calculus.
Yeah.
It just happened, and it happened for many different reasons. But it was because I had blended my operational experience, my people experience, everything else in between.
All of the
And
breadth
I,
of experience.
yep, the
Yeah.
breadth and depth.
Hmm.
And I will say this, and maybe like my colleagues will disagree with me, but I hope not. Security is a hospitality business. It is all service oriented. It needs to be treated that way. So maybe like my catering days of like making sure like bridezillas were like happy was necessary.
I'm sure, and your work ethic. I mean, there's few more hardworking industries and jobs than working in the kitchen, right, or being a
Yep.
chef, um,
Oh yeah.
and
It
pressure
helps.
as well, right? The pressure that you're under to deliver. So
Yeah, something never changed. Like the orders come in, you have to deliver. Like the plate still has to be hot. So yeah, and somehow I replaced the hot plates with more hot plates.
yeah.
How does that work? Anyways, so one thing led to another, and between like 2010 and 13, like there were like a few roles that I took on, and none were like significant until like I hit this company called Omada Health, which one of your guests, Bill Doherty, actually worked at.
Right.
So like it's a small
Yeah.
world there. I was hired as initially I was hired as a DevOps person because I had like the experience from an operational perspective. This is predating, and this is right around the time that AWS became the thing. I was still in the data centers. I remember one role I had to like literally spin up the entire data center with like the IBM Blade Center, the switches, this and that, their storage cluster within like 18 days of my start to get the UAT going. And I was literally like in a data center in Santa Clara, California, racking, stacking, figuring out the switching, figuring out the the networking and all that stuff. And I had to basically get our first customer to like vet it. And there was a CISSP that was asking me a lot of questions. I was like, "What the hell is a CISSP thing that we're talking about? Like, I need to figure this out." So around 2013, that's when I got into more about the practice of security, the formalities of security.
Right.
I had practiced it before, like unofficially,
Yeah.
not
More
informally,
focused on that area.
more
Yeah.
focused. Yeah. Then I got this bug in me that I was like, I'm going to pass this thing. I'm going to go study for a CISSP because I want to know what this is. I have to understand it. Like there's just like that curiosity, like itch. It needed to be scratched. I will tell you that I did self study. There's a website called ccccure.org, which is basically like the trainer.
Yep.
Um, I think is it what was his name? Clement? Is that who was running it? I think he passed away, if I remember correctly, a
Yeah, I
few
don't know.
years ago. He actually like sent me an email. It was like, "Here's how you study for CSSP. Take my quizzes." And at the time, like, there was like the Sean Harris Bible for CSSP. I read that thing all 1,000 pages through and through. I would spend 2 hours every day reading as many pages as I can. I would watch her videos, then I would go and like I'd spend another hour taking those like trainer
Yeah.
quizzes, and I did this for a straight 3 months, and that's how I passed it. Never went to a boot camp, never did any of that stuff. I am a firm believer that if you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
And that's how I formulated my plan. And in fact, I posted, and a bunch of people like use the same thing, and they were successful. By the time I went and took the CSSP, I was kind of unimpressed
Why is that?
because the test was like was kind of like blown out of proportion. It was like, oh, it's the hardest test you're ever going to take, like this and this and this and that. I think I over prepared.
Right.
Let me put it that way, because I remember like when I got like the printout that said congratulations, you passed, didn't have the score and everything. I texted my wife. I was like, I passed, but I'm kind of like not really like giddy about the
Yeah.
situation. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
Nonetheless, but I did pass, and it was a good experience, and I loved it. And I still maintain my CISSP despite the fact that there's a bunch of angry people that say you shouldn't.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going
Especially when you
around.
get to a certain level. Yeah, like they bash it. It's okay. I don't mind it. Anyways, but I passed it, and then like at Omada Health, my goal was really like was to basically stand up this digital health shop I was, I think, number 42, 45, or something like that. I was initially hired as a DevOps person, but I was like, yeah, I think we got the DevOps portion down. Like, let's figure out how to like do security. Let's figure out how to like operate within the world of HIPAA, because HIPAA was still a thing, and it's still a thing. So I was in charge of security, IT, and some portions of DevOps, but eventually, like, we kind of like handed off that portion of it to the engineering team
Hmm.
so that they could run it. I focused mainly on the security and like, sort of like, the IT portions of it, make sure like everything is operation, like good to go. And this is where the cloud world became the thing. And I was just riding that wave, like not knowing what we're doing. It's all AWS, it's all cloud native. Let's figure it out.
And were you the only security person there at the time? Like you,
Sole
yeah,
contributor. Startup worlds are very much like that. And in fact, like I just wrote an article about that on Medium, which is, listen, like I have always been about the startup scene. So my pedigree is very much like small companies who want to like, operate within highly regulated industries. They need security, but they don't know what security is. So, I go in and I help them out as much as I can, and then eventually I'll burn out and like fizzle out and go find the next thing. Totally okay. That's what I enjoy doing. I like to basically be able to build out, show that it's been built out, show efficacy, move on to the next thing. And there's like kind of sort of like this like maybe the concept of like fighting the sunk cost fallacies, in some respect, where I'm very good about standing it up, very good about being scrappy, getting it up and running, making sure like things are working. And Omada was really interesting because like not only did I have to build it, but I also had to sell it. I was literally selling to like like large enterprises. I remember that one of my counterparts from a very large aerospace company sat there for like 2 days and bashed me left and right and asked me lots of questions, and I had the questions, and we became good friends. His name is Chris. Hi, Chris, if he ever sees this. uh,
I'm sure he
like
will.
the guy
I'm
was,
sure he will.
he was like, he would challenge me, like, sometimes I would give him an answer. He would like, Will, he would look at me like sternly, Will. I was like, okay, what do you want to know? How do you want to like, figure this out? So that was also like, how I, what I didn't know at the time was that's actually like the role of the CISO, sell, right? Sell
Yeah,
security, security enablement. So my commercial team would lean on me, and our CTO, at the time we used to call me the maestro, because I would just go in there and like sell the security narrative,
yeah,
the story that I had basically built for that company. That became lucrative. I didn't have the CISO title at the time. I had the director
yeah.
title, but then like the next company, which was like acquired by BlackRock, set me up.
Right.
They hired me as a director, and one thing led to another, and somebody gave me the CISO title. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
Sure, here we go.
Well, that's a
And
challenge for
that's
so many
that's
people. There are a lot of people out there that are doing the job, but aren't getting that CISO title. I'm not sure how the SEC regulations. I'm not sure if this change in administration will change much
yeah,
of this stuff. But
yeah,
like there's certainly a lot of people that I think are doing a CISO role, but haven't got that CISO
they
title.
are. But
So
here's the thing: it's just a title. Titles are for free. They're free. One thing I learned in Silicon Valley is like the titles, they don't matter
hmm,
that much. They can be handed out. It's free.
yeah,
It's what you do and how effective you are. And if I could like, encourage everyone, I would say focus less about the title.
yeah,
Focus more about the impact that you're delivering. I always saw myself as a shareholder because I had like, that pedigree of like, running my own business. It's like if I'm joining a company, I'm going to treat it as if this is my business, that
right,
I'm running it, and I'm going to like protect it, and I'm going to look out for it as well as I would with my own pocket, right? If this is coming out of my paycheck, if this is coming out of my bank account, I'm going to treat it exactly the same way. That's really what you need to show as an individual contributor. Ultimately, you will get the title. I think that the CISO title was really lucrative at one point, and it still is. Let's not get it wrong.
yeah,
Makes lots of money. If money is your only incentive, I don't think it's going to work out well.
yeah, yep,
I think that everybody should be focused about what they need to do to make themselves successful. Your success is the business success, and someone will eventually make it worth your while. In my career, every single person that has hired me has seen it exactly that way, and I've always wanted to make sure that who I work for sees me as a contributor to their success and vice versa. and eventually it'll pay off. And if it doesn't, that's okay. The world is big. We'll go find another one. We'll
Yeah.
try again. Tenacity is a thing.
Yeah, it is, and everything you're describing there, you know, I've spoken to a number of CISOs, and the people that want the CISO title might say it's easy for somebody that's had the title to say it's less important, but the truth is that I think as it comes, and people get more mature in their careers, as they get more and more positions at that kind of level, exec level, you start to realize that it's how you impact the business that makes the big difference, not that CISO title. And in some cases, you might be better off without that CISO title.
Especially these days.
Right. Absolutely. And you can earn, I think there's been a
liability there.
Yes, 100%. And I think there's been a big, like this, you know, seeing, maybe it's again another post pandemic thing, but I've definitely seen like a lot more effort to give people careers and career movement that don't want to go into management, that want to stay technical. And I see better and better paying like engineer, architect roles, strategist roles, you know, these sort of roles where you could earn as good as some CISOs are earning in certainly in sort of smaller businesses. You know, of course, probably not going to earn the same as the ones that are in the Fortune 50. But there's also very different types of CISOs, like very different types, and also like you can be interested in being a certain type of CISO anyway. Like a lot of CISOs, somebody that wants to work and enjoys working with startups and being really involved, and they're probably going to hate working for Coca-Cola, right? They're going to hate working for a company like that.
You know what's funny about this whole situation is like, you know, I in the before days, there was a website, there was a social media website called Twitter that I no longer participate in.
Right, yeah.
And I deleted all my tweets from 2009. Like I just deleted like 50,000 of them.
Right.
But I did have one tweet, which was the different types of CISOs. And I had like, I think I was up to 18.
Right, wow. Yeah.
Like the startup CISO, the MISO, the BISO, there was a whole permutation to the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
I think the title itself is like, you know, look, you know, like the reality of the situation is like, in fact, like, you know, I've been having like recent conversations around like, you know, what is a CISO? Like, what does it do? How does it like behave? Who does it report to? All of that. The reporting lineage is still very much undecided. There is no right formula to it. Every company will treat it differently. There are like, you know, CISOs that are reporting to CTOs. There are CISOs that report to COOs. I've even seen the CISOs report to GCs. I've been one of them.
Yeah.
So there are many different ways of treating it. The title means nothing as far as I'm concerned. It's what you do with the job that has been given to you. That's what matters fundamentally.
Yeah.
The title is, you know, it might give you like some niceties. Maybe like you end up on a podcast, you get to like, you know, exercise thought leadership, whatever the case might be. But beyond that, you know, it's still like in its infancy stage. Even like what are we, like year 30 at this point with the title? I forget. I think like 95 was like when
I don't know who the first
like,
one was, but it's been about for longer than, I mean, I started my business in 2012. I've been in tech recruitment 25 years. I mean, I'd certainly had come across CISOs prior to having a cybersecurity. Yeah, it's been about for a while.
And it's evolving. The role has evolved quite a bit. I mean, like, you know, even like, you know, if I look at it from like, you know, 10 years ago, like it's different at this point. So it's going to continue evolving until like, you know, like the regulators actually like anoint it to be a real thing, which they are at this point, right? Like, you know, there's a lot more emphasis on it. Interestingly enough, the HIPAA world, there was an information security officer that had to be there. Like that was actually a CFR requirement. So it has been a thing. It's just like, you know, it's going to take some time for, you know, obviously the decision makers, the policy makers, the regulators to all agree and figure out what this will ultimately be.
Yeah.
Right. And meanwhile, we still have cybersecurity. We still have our responsibilities. We got to protect the herd, if you will.
Yeah, and we the board. I guess all of that is just pressure on the board to actually recognise it as a C-level position and in a conversation. It's interesting. I've started to see CIO and CISO roles merging back almost again. So yeah, I think that's going to be a thing.
I mean, you know, it's funny because there's actually like I think There is one person, I won't name names because I don't want to put them on the
Yeah.
stage too much. It's just it would be unfair to them. But at least somebody who's like close to, I would imagine the two of
Yeah.
us, they were hired as CISO and now they're a CIO slash CISO. So it is happening.
Hmm.
It will happen. I think that that's what it used to look like. The role sort of morphed into something. There was a segue of sorts. It branched out. Now it's coming back.
Yes.
It's part of the evolution. It is part of the business world. Things will always change, you know,
Yeah.
and that's completely okay. It doesn't mean like the cybersecurity responsibilities will go away. It just means look slightly different, and there might be like a different lens, strategically speaking, on the roles
Yeah.
and the function.
But I see that, I think giving them both titles is making sure it doesn't go back to where it was, where like the security wasn't really thought of so much in a CIO's world, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody realizes the importance of the function itself. Like
yeah.
if I were to look at it, like that's not going to go away.
Yeah.
Like security is here to stay. Um, with digital transformation, with everything that's happening, it's a little bit chaotic right now. Like security itself is struggling because they're like, well, who does what? How do we do it? What are the lines of roles and responsibilities? How do we disseminate? How do we make sure we're doing it all correctly? All of that is valid points. There are really good questions. Those questions ought to be asked within the business line and within the company that you're working. I don't think as an industry we're going to agree because let's face it, there's different ways to skin that cat.
Yeah.
But as long as we're doing it, that's what matters.
Yeah.
As long as there's a function within a company that's doing it, that's what matters. How we approach it, obviously, leadership does need to be exercised there. We need to figure it out, and everybody will figure it out.
Yeah. And what will work in one business won't necessarily work in another business, right? So you can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you where I am right now. I could implement they hired me for my experience, and I've lived enough to know what it looks like, but I could not replay or the thing that I did say 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at the same company here.
Right.
I couldn't do it. The formula would not work.
Hmm.
It would be inoculating someone with a vaccine that basically just their body would reject, right? Just wouldn't work. So you have to figure it out. You have to be dynamic about that, and that's the point of security. Is that it's pretty fluid. It's pretty dynamic. You have to think on your feet.
Yep.
That's a lot of folks want to kind of adopt the frameworks. I'm like, yeah, that's great if you stick to the framework manifesto and do that. You might not succeed because you're not necessarily looking at the business needs. You're trying to inject your needs into the business, and there's going to be a discrepancy there.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with any, and it's funny, we'll talk a bit about attributes and stuff, but a constant one that I see and also that I hear is that business knowledge, because I think the most successful CISOs know and understand what the business does and how to enable, and you talked about enablement, how they enable the business to do what they need to do while minimizing risk.
Yeah, 100% agree. Where I was the most successful was understanding the business. When I was the least successful was trying to kind of pattern match and say, well, this is the thing that you need to do without understanding the line of business or what it needs from me.
Right.
And I will be the first one to say that I didn't succeed in one role. I actually worked myself out of it.
Right. Right. And that's a good thing, because people need to learn, or certain people need to hear that not everything is the perfect, everything works out perfectly. And these people that you look up to that have been a CISO and then, multiple CISOs or moved it around, and you're looking at them on LinkedIn. I mean, one day I'll be like that person, and you don't know. And this is what was one of the inspirations of this part. You don't know the ups and downs and sideward steps and the things that people have had to endure and go through to have the career that they've had. So, these sort of things are opportunities to bring that out and to normalize the fact that, there will be people watching this now that were having an amazing career path and then were laid off and have been sitting there for 3 or 4 months, maybe not working. Right. And that doesn't mean that you're not a good employee. It doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do. And it doesn't mean that the other people that you look up to haven't been through that. And so it's important. I think it's important for people to see and hear this sort of stuff, because
it's absolutely paramount. Everybody has to go through failure. Failure is the basic model of learning. When you wear that on your sleeve, you will know what not to do. but everyone has to fail at some point.
Right.
Mistakes are part of the learning model. If you don't fail, I would probably say like, you're not in the right room.
Right. I mean, you got to let it happen sometime. I mean, within reason, right? So I look at my 5-year-old. I was peeling an onion, and she was like, "Can I have a bite of it?" And I was like, "You can have a bite of a raw onion if you want to." And I was like, "It doesn't taste very good." And she was like, "But I said you can have a bite." So she had a bite, and then she was like, But you got to learn that stuff now. If that had been some sort of, I don't know, poison ivy or something, I wouldn't let her do it, right? But so there's a level of mistake.
Yeah. There's definitely like, sort of like, categories of mistakes that you can make.
Right.
I do think that, and this is like, where like, the mentorship, but also like, who's like, who's behind you, who's supporting you. I had a conversation with a very dear friend who I was, discussing like, sort of the hierarchy, reporting lines, etc. And his response was like, I will report to the person who has my back, full stop. And he is a CISO himself. That's the reality of the situation.
Right.
Yeah. And like that goes kind of back to like, CISOs are going to make mistakes. Security is going to make mistakes. Mistakes happen. That's why we have like, like data breaches. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lose sleep over data breaches. What I will lose sleep over is, did I have that in the line of sight? Those things that, cause a data breach. Yeah. I'm not worried about preventing a data breach. I actually think like, this is like, there is something to be said about like, a lot of practitioners often recite the word prevention. It makes me sometimes just not necessarily cringe, but I shake every time I hear that. I don't think it's about prevention. It's about detection.
Right.
Have we done everything that, minimizes the blast radius? And there's a cringy word right there. It's very buzzy.
Right. But you think about it with how, I mean, I think of my house here, and I'll say my wife hates it, but I have cameras all over the place here because I have an alarm system and I have locks on the doors, right? But I also want to know that like cameras deter people from even trying in the first place, right? So that's why we got them. Yeah. And my wife's like, I hate that we got cameras all over the place. And I said, at some point we might need them, right? Hopefully we won't. Yeah. But is that kind of, there's a lot more to it than just preventing somebody, putting them off, deterring them. There's a lot of other things you can do. So, well, thank you for joining us for part 1 of our interview with Will Gregorian. That's going to be the end of that. We're going to follow up with part 2 next week. We release new episodes every Tuesday, so please make sure that you join us and let us know any of your feedback. Always lovely to hear from our guests. One of the reasons why we are now doing these in 2 parts is because of some of the feedback we've received. So thank you again, and look forward to speaking to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.